Okay, hello everyone. Hopefully my voice is loud and clear. Okay. So for this episode, I wanted to talk about culture and what I'm seeing happening in modern culture. And of course, I'm just 1 in 8 billion, just, a human being sharing my opinion. But, the species, I have this attitude that we're all like a giant tribe and we come and report back to the tribe. So the human species is the, biological tribe that I am part of. And so the destiny of the human species is important. That means we protect our own tribe. Our tribe is on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Okay. Certain ideas I want to speak about in today's episode. The idea goes beyond even human culture. It's something I am noticing about human nature. And so I require to open the notepad. And so, dear viewers, look at the screen if you can. If you're driving, just hear me. So I'm going to begin by saying just the ideas that inspired this episode. God is the top G. And then I've written in the subtitle, ego, culture, karma, realization. And I've also written a question. I was thinking this before I started the episode, and I've written, does forgetting lead to worship? Does forgetting lead to worship? So right now, our starting point is, as humans, humans alive in 2023. That's our starting point. Human consciousness is present in 2023. Now, or maybe the year 20,234, who knows? Human consciousness is present in 2023, okay? Aside from needing to explain these terms here, I wanted to just share certain understandings I have about the idea of God. And recently I have opened to this idea experientially in a new way this year. And so I'll be talking more about it. Okay. All right. Okay. So, we are all here now as creatures in a world, conscious of today through the journeys of yesterday and the adventures of tomorrow. The idea of God is not an idea, but it is fascinating in the sense that mankind's attention has come to the notion of an inconceivable creator. You see, if you look at this world, every human being, first of all, is maintaining their consciousness through language in the sense of a story, character in a story. And so when we look at the evolution of human attention, we find that this human being suddenly was unconsciously moving and suddenly became conscious that it is moving. It became conscious it is separate from the world. And the moment self-awareness stabilized through an individual animal body, it began having relationships with the external in ways it didn't have before. What it means is that the magnificence of the world we're in, it was like one piece of cake, and this cake was bored, and at some point the cake was cut into pieces, and suddenly one of the pieces noticed the rest of the pieces. That is human consciousness. So we see in history examples of human beings worshipping nature. They call that, if I remember correctly, pantheism. Pantheism. Yeah, I think it's pantheism, the worship of nature. So people were like, yo, this tree is my God, this tree is my truth, or the sun is my truth, or that mountain is my truth, or the fog is my truth, or da 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 da. So it was as if consciousness emerged out of nowhere. Suddenly attention was found in the world, and this attention was like, yo, what should I focus on? Because that's really wherever our attention goes, it becomes our truth. You could be the most religious man, or you could be the most secular person, and let's say you're the most secular person, you go around a group of religious people for like a month, and you're a religious person, you go around a group of secular people for a month, you're going to suddenly see the context of the behavior that you receive from the environment is changing. Right? So human beings are creatures that it's not just like a human being can come and lie to you, or in some sense, but in the way that your attention opens up to reality, it could be under assumptions that in some sense were not of your experience. Do you see? Like the human mind is not everybody's just knowing everything they're experiencing. Language is a sort of indirect giving of reality. Language is a system we use to transfer the inner films behind our eyes through words to the others in front of our eyes. So anyways, so people were worshiping objects. Some dude saw like an object, imagine some guy saw like, I don't know, saw a stick in the forest, like a uniquely shaped stick, and then the sunbeams were hitting it and the person's like, yo, this is divine, this is truth. And then from objects, this is the bizarre thing, because we are under the impression that mankind just worshipped objects and then stopped. But no. After object worship, or some term it idol worship, there came idea worship, subject worship. Okay, and so the human being that was thinking that it's like an individual is the source of all power began to realize, no, it's not an individual that is the source of the power. It is the idea of the whole thing where the individual finds itself in. That is the whole power. So human beings were thinking objects were truth, and somebody came and slapped the objects out of their hand. They thought subjects were truth, and this is the bizarre thing. This is the bizarre thing where in my youth I felt like, the Abrahamic religions had come and awakened man, to the inconceivable presence of the world, right? But I realized, no. Most religious people I see, they are subject worshiping. That means they don't have experiences that verify why they're doing what they're doing. Do you understand? That means it's like if you took a human being and you were like right down, if let's say there was in the future, there's going to be, our phones are going to be like these spheres that are going to hover like a meter above our heads. Everyone's going to have a drone sphere floating camera, in the future. Your phone's going to just follow you. You're never going to put it in your pocket again. The phones are just going to follow us everywhere. All our technology, all the stuff that man is carrying, right? The moment certain, let's say, discoveries are made in the anti-gravity field. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is, if there was something that would record your whole day, like a surveillance camera that was recording everything you're doing, both in the inner realms and outer realms, okay, this surveillance camera would reveal that not all of your actions are based on your own experiences. That means thoughts that are not from your experience come. So I'll give you an example. Like, I've never been skydiving. Okay, and now imagine I never saw a video of skydiving and somebody came and told me, yo man, did you know you can go and jump into the sky? And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean jump into the sky? You mean like jump from the ground up? And the person's like, no, you can jump into the sky. And then the person explains, and imagine before the person saying jumping into the sky, right, before describing the experience, the person's like, yo, I don't know what it is. My memories do not fulfill the picture of that your words are trying to paint, So anyways, what I'm trying to say is that mankind, I thought that we stopped worshiping subjects. I thought that religious people were under the impression that there is an inconceivable creator. The concept of a creator is conceivable, but the concept of an inconceivable, the idea of the inconceivable, is not conceivable. Do you see? So what I'm trying to say is that for me, it's so bizarre because I feel religion, imagine like, I'm just saying this as a metaphor. For me, the concept of God is really beyond the human mind, So anyways, let me bring this down. So I'm talking about the past, how people were worshiping objects, how people moved on to worshiping subjects, and then, there was, let's say, realizations of divinity and timelessness and whatnot, and beyondism, let's say. All right. To continue, what I'm saying is like creatures have arrived out of nowhere from the the creatures have emerged, in the middle of nowhere. Out of nowhere, we've suddenly become conscious of the world. And really, what really the story of human life is where the attention of these creatures are going. The attention went outside, the attention went inside. Now we're living in Kali Yuga, the attention is again outside. Some people think being a human being is due to the planet, but in some sense it's also due to the universe. And so what I'm trying to say is that there is a reason in religions, those holy men were called prophets, messengers. Do you see? The messenger is not the message. Those people who worship the messenger have forgotten the message. I shouldn't say worship the message. The idea is you're worshiping the presence of the messenger, which is God, actually. But if you worship it, like the whole point of this episode, the reason I'm saying God is not the top G, because I realize there's this thing going on online, right? And in the world, like there's these world events that were going on that I wasn't aware of, right? And so what's going on is that it's like modern human beings are wondering about how to be human beings, and they, instead of going within and realizing that they're here to be a new being, a being that has never existed before, like an instrument that has never existed, or a DNA that has never existed like this before, and rather human beings are looking outside. So let me tell you what has happened. It's such a beautiful story. The world was not a physical place for the ancient ones. For the ancient ones, even ancient Greeks, the likes of Aristotle, if somebody went back and said, yo, Aristotle, what's imagination? He would say it is in some sense something that the soul is using. You see, this is why I say language is a technology. Your inner realms, it's like you're a user of that technology. You're not that. I am not these words, but I am using these words. So these words have part of me kind of inspiring their existence. So what I'm trying to say is that I know it's like we've had examples of object worship, we've had examples of subject worship, and now you combine the two, it becomes people worship. Do you see what I'm saying? And so this is what I realized. This is what I realized, where I saw, I'm someone who, I'm in a very unique situation. I have an intention that in this lifetime to fearlessly speak in front of the whole species. But at the same time, I have there was a time where, I have a degree in film, and I began wondering about the lives of people who in some sense get a lot of attention in this world. And then this moment came where I asked myself, if like tomorrow I woke up, right, and imagine I was in another parallel universe, or imagine I teleported to another species, planet that was like Earth with the similar like people, but let's say different kind of people, right? And imagine one day I woke up and the whole planet of that, let's say planet in let's say that planet in the Andromeda star system, I wake up in that planet, right? And I wake up and I see everybody's worshiping me. And then I ask myself, what kind of a being am I? That in some sense beings must worship me? Who the hell that question came to me, right? And I realized in some sense that this is the profoundness, that the top G is not a human archetype. It is a state of being. That means the most advanced beings on this planet, they're not trying to play a subjective costume game of their own action figure in their mind. Do you see? There's something else. But this doesn't mean the traditional is wrong because the times have changed, and the modern is wrong because we're forgetting the traditional. Do you see what I'm saying? The idea is that, do we want to live in a world where our happiness is cloned? Do we all want to be the freaking same thing and be like, okay, now we're happy? Or do we realize, do we want to be such an advanced species that with our differences, with all the challenges the cosmos brought us, we still manage to build an advanced civilization and have fun? Because I'm telling you, think about all the problems in your life. If they were solved, what would you be doing now? Do you see what I'm saying? Mankind is not actually a creature that is constantly here to be in a state of competition. Do you see? The competition is based on the type of being you are. If you're a physical being, you're competing with physical beings. If you're a non-physical being, you're competing with non-physical beings. If you're a being who has, through mysticism, discovered that you are nothing because what is looking through you is unknown, and how can the unknown be known? So then the moment comes where you have to ask yourself, is the most advanced thing an idea? Do you see? That means, let's say an advanced alien, like forget human beings that are cool, right? Let's say all the coolest celebrities on the planet, they were like, yo, people, look at me, watch me, right? But imagine an alien came down. Oh, imagine in that time of history where all the badass people on the planet are fighting with each other, right? There comes a moment when an alien lands down, and the alien says, you guys think you're alpha. Do you know? Or imagine, if you're religious, it's like if you've done something wrong and you've experienced the karma of it. You see, there is something that I feel this world will endlessly give human beings a lesson of it, and I'm the one. I have a task in this moment to tell human species that sometimes if you understand something, you don't enter the blunder. Okay, so here's the contrast. Any human being who has ever spoken about God, the idea of God. Okay, let's say you're someone who has said, God is on your side, or you've thought you're a god, or you think someone else is a god, or you think something outside of you is a god, or you think even your soul is a god, or whatever, right? I am telling you, when it comes to the outer realms, there is a chain of command, and there is an authority. And as Terence McKenna very elegantly said, there's another tenant in the room. We're not just physical beings, dear human beings. Because if we were, I wouldn't be able to speak to you. I would just be a freaking statue. We'd all be freaking statues in a photograph. But it's a film with unknown variables everywhere. The thing about religion is that this is something where I was raised in, I was born in the country of Iran, right? And Iran had a monarchy, very royal monarchy, even though the monarchy messed up, but still it had a monarchy. And then suddenly an Islamic republic came, right? And I was raised in a very religious environment, and the concept of kings and like the old Persia and all of that, none of that was like present in my childhood. It was as if I was it's as if the country of Iran is visiting a Muslim state, through its leadership. But the country's origin was not just based on Muslim ideas. So anyways, being raised in Iran, I suddenly realized, oh my God, it's not that the laws of the nation are just based on outer physical realm evaluations, but the righteousness of how you're being a human being in a nation is being based on religious law. Okay, now for me, this is something very bizarre, right? Because I cannot understand. This is very difficult for me. I mean, I can't see religion and politics mixing. Religion is about submission. Okay, religion is about submitting the ego. Politics is about being an ego that dominates all the other egos. So politics is about domination taking. Religion is about giving and surrender, the monotheistic approach. Even in the polytheistic, there is the same. People say, polytheists and monotheists are different, but let me tell you what their difference is. One is considering an inconceivable creator, the other is considering an inconceivable self. That's it. In polytheistic traditions, the soul is God. In monotheistic traditions, the soul is a servant of God. Because let me tell you, the idea of service has a very profound power. The idea of service means a human being's personal dimensions had all the desires to not care for the world. But for some strange miracle, the person has noticed something more than themselves, and they're like, what's the point of being in a world to assist it? There is a redemption factor. For example, you see like Lionel Messi, right? And for example, like imagine, I think there was this other guy named Xavi or something. I haven't watched TV in like years, but it's as if the guy who did the assist and then Lionel Messi scored, everybody goes to Lionel Messi and Lionel Messi ends up getting an inflated ego. But the guy who doesn't get all the fame, he doesn't get an inflated ego, but he gets the humility of experiencing that power archetype in a healthy way, right? Right now, politicians are, they haven't realized that the media age has arose, and in the future, every politician is going to have a stand-up comedian just beside them in their campaigns. Because it's in various states, you see the governance. I thought about it and it blew my mind. It was like, I don't know how right now, whoever you are, the president or nation or whoever, I don't know, politics is so bizarre that you have to have a savage ignorance to just enter it. And I was like, okay, what is the point? Should somebody go and become the political leader of one nation and then that nation trying to change the other nations? No. And for the first time, I had to raise my ego beyond the nationalism of the planet. And that all nations are children in a classroom. And the teacher is the inconceivable, which can be seen for the secular as the future and for the religious as God. For anyone who's religious, your future is God. That's what you have accepted. All returns to that where it started from. What God means is that this world is not just the visible dimension. You have a visible body. Your visible body is found within your invisible awareness. Your awareness is how the space where your body is found is alive because of your body. This is a genius thing the body is doing. Evolution has made an object into a subject to itself. The subject is wondering it's a subject and has noticed the unknown witness. We have reached that era in human history where the unknown viewer within is becoming acknowledged. The more this becomes acknowledged, a new era will arise, and this era will be an era of dehumanized study. So what does this mean? This means that right now human beings are, because we don't know how to be advanced human beings yet, we're still fascinated to be human beings. But the moment we attain advancement and the victories of humanity begin, right now it's kind of like it's like, you know what it is? It's like a sine wave where it's like we were in the trough, now we're going back to the peak. That means I thought I was, the civilization 1.0 was going downhill. But I realized that from the downhill it just goes uphill. You fail, you get defeated, you feel bad until some point comes where you're like, okay, what can be done? And then, you feel something in this world. Something that is more, more than just your ideology. For me, the past is like an assistant. Do you know? My memories, they're like my past selves are assistants. The memory is assisting the present by giving it a meaning of purpose of future purpose. Giving it a meaning of future purpose. So, now I brought the notepad, but I didn't write anything. Okay. The species has not realized we can be way more advanced human beings than we are now. And if we can overcome collective fear, we will bring forth an era of incredible individual freedom. You see, collective fears are now impinging on individual lives, right? So what I'm trying to say, dear viewers, this world is so mysterious that it's like, how can you worship an object? And how can you just worship a subject? I mean, it's like, sometimes they say language is a finger pointing to the stars. Don't look at the finger, look at where it's pointing to. My mind has created theological metaphors to try to comprehend theology. Okay? And I'm going to share two of those metaphors. One metaphor, right? I thought in some sense, why does an eternal being need to watch the temporary? Why does anything beyond this dimension need to care for this dimension? I thought about it, guys. I thought, like, imagine, like, somebody who's in university going into, like, grade 1 and sitting there in the classroom, and the teacher's like, what are you doing here, kid? And it's like, this is my karma. I need to be in grade 1, and the teacher's like, you fool, you have miscontextualized yourself. And so what I mean by this, really, is that the attention that looks at the lesser world is afraid of going above the higher world, so it could be a sign that it's an inferior, it's not an ultimate being. Do you understand? That means it's like one way that we can feel like God is because it in some sense it's beyond man. I was thinking of it in this way, okay? I'm like, imagine these are the two metaphors. Imagine somebody sends a text message. Imagine your friend sends you a text message, okay? And your friend says, yo, meet me at this gaming cafe, okay? And so instead of you going to the location, instead of reading the text message, understanding what it means in the context of everything else, and then going about your day, going and trusting and going about your day, instead of the guy going to the gaming cafe, he's like, yo, this text message is sacred, I'm gonna make my grandchildren memorize this text message, and they're gonna not even know who sent the text message, do you know? But in some sense, generations will worship this text message, and the guy is waiting in the gaming cafe. God is waiting for man. Do you see? I looked in the mirror. I asked a question recently in the community tab of my YouTube channel, and I was like, if you were your own, I was like, be honest, people, if you were your own commander, would you follow yourself into battle? And I reached a point where I was like, yes, but then I realized in some sense, there is an authority that is so evident in how I did not create the world I'm in externally. That means in front of my eyes, I'm in a world I didn't create. Behind my eyes, I'm in a world I did create. But in these two worlds, like the wings of a bird, the inner realms and outer realms flapping synchronistically, simultaneously, one begins to realize that the whole moment is the point of every point in the moment. If in the future aliens land down and start healing people, should we start worshiping them? If mankind makes like some next level technology and it heals everyone, should people start worshiping power? Do you see? Sometimes the world gives beings incredible power and they don't understand why they got this power. Do you know? But the world gives you that power to realize that the power of the world is beyond the power given to you. Do you see? I'm just a freaking podcaster on a rock in the middle of nowhere. But the power of the world, which is the whole event happening, that's where it's at. So in some sense, if an alien lands down, should you worship it? No. Do you know? As if aliens, imagine the aliens come and heal everybody, right? And they're like, yo, why aren't you guys worshiping us? It's like we did what you guys never thought was possible. We did miracles in front of your eyes. Why aren't you guys worshiping us? And we look at the aliens and we're like, we're a species so wise that we have realized that to worship an object and subject in a changing world is a fool's errand. but to in some sense worship and have faith in the inconceivable totality of it, which can only be instant. I don't know how people say I'm gonna have faith in the future. It's like faith is an instantaneous expression. The faith is always now. That means before you learned language, your biological system had faith of just you being a child moving in this world. Think about it. Every person you see, good or evil, vicious or kind, used to be a child. Do you know? And we forget that people remember their childhoods. We're actually tunneling through self-simulations that we've lived through. So in some sense, if you're a human being that in some sense is being worshipped, I will advise you to, in some sense, immediately become a silly person and reveal to everyone what you don't know. Do you know, like, I see certain celebrities, and I don't know, I mean, some people say Hollywood is a dark place, some people say it's there's stars there, but at the same time, it's like, sure, human mind, there's so many cultural programs that, of course, like, we can't expect all human cultural programs to be pure or to value the incredible addition of the human mind to the picture. You see, like, there was a time where creativity meant you were like an animal. You just bit and climbed trees and just freaking moved around in the world, right? That was like creativity. It's like, and imagine back in the day, like, there were like two cavemen, and one caveman jumped up and grabbed a branch, and all the other cavemen were like, this guy's a savant, this guy's a freaking genius. Or imagine, like, lightning hit a tree, there was fire there, and then the cavemen just in some sense, took like, imagine lightning hits a tree, bunch of cavemen are around there, a burning branch falls on a bush and a giant bush burns, and this first caveman grabs like a burning branch and runs back to the other caveman. That's like an explorer, that's like a genius. Do you see? So you see in all levels, even you look at it in the sense of cells, even though we don't see personalities to them, but anything that moves is imbued a soul or is in the presence of one. That means matter for the human being could be the thoughts of a greater dimension. That means what is physical, for example, to a square may be non-physical to a cube. So this is Mr. Within's advice. I'm going to share with you a story. There was this monk, it's a Zen story. There was this Zen monk back in the day, and this Zen monk was like, had found some sort of inner peace. But he was just a young monk. And this young monk, starts talking, just starts helping people. And one day, the whole village is like, yo, you're the wisest person in the village. We want you to be our master. And we are all going to be your disciples. And the monk was like, oh my God, is this Jungian synchronicity, even though Carl Jung wasn't born at that time? And the monk says, okay, this is maybe like, destiny. Maybe this is, I have to do this. And so they all, excuse me, they all, the monk, they put a white scarf around the monk. And so all the people gather around, and this monk has become the guru. Yay, guru. And so the monk, they ask the monk, one of them goes and asks the monk and says a question that starts with, why is the world here, or why? And this monk, who's acting like this, who suddenly finds himself in the archetype of an enlightened guru, The story continues on with a cold sweat, a drop of sweat coming down from his head, and he gets just this feeling that I don't know, and he immediately takes off the scarf and looks at everyone and says, I am not your guru, I am leaving. And he leaves that town and comes back 2 years later with a different glow in his eyes. Dear human beings, there's a huge chance that there's more than human beings. To honor a human being is to honor their service. You know, for example, when I see like celebrities, let's say like movie actors, right? I don't care. Like, I mean, sure, they could be like effed up people or good people, right? Or very kind people or effed up people, right? But to me, they have served. They have served the mind of their species. They have occupied a role, and this is where the species has to begin separating the roles and duties of an advanced civilization from a morality that is starting from every person's inner realm as a sort of moral relativism. So that means every person has a different sense of what is right and wrong. In one cultural program, like wearing a hat is wrong, you know, in an other cultural program, you know, like when I went to grade 9, I was in this school called Thornley, and everybody was wearing hats inside. And to me, that was strange. It's as if coolness had bypassed logic, you know. Yeah, that's the problem, I think, with the educational system. It's like, you know, it's like you're putting a bunch of inner realms that don't know the outer realms yet in the same place, and then they all freak out. But everything is necessary. You know, there's this view on strength that you don't suddenly find yourself strong one day, that you have to go through numerous mini battles. That means it's like there are micro victories and there are macro victories. You know, and I realized something early on, that micro victories inevitably lead to a macro victory. So I was like, okay, if like I record a talk every day, maybe I'll get to the 10,000 before I, transition. Before I enter the door of the next view, or the next horizon, or the next non-conceptual state. You see? Because we're in the world, you can say we're physical beings, you know. I don't know if people have place where you'd put on these like gadgets on you, these vests, and the people would go in a dark room and shoot each other with laser, you know. You know, I have the attitude that there is an unknown viewer looking through my eyes, and this unknown viewer is equipped with the human existence. So I am dressed in existence, but I am not just an existential entity, because an unknown viewer is aware that existence is existing. That means the awareness of existence is not an existential phenomenon. So sometimes a person may think, they're divine, they're righteous, they're good, and that could be because they're avoiding the other side of the coin. This is what I realized, those people who have to, in some sense, be a certain thing in front of everybody all the time, right? I realized this 3 days ago. It was like the greatest freedom, the greatest liberation, It's like one can say there is unconscious service and there's conscious service. So, are you convinced by yourself? Are you convinced by others? Are you convinced by the world? Or have you finally realized it's unknown? That's the profoundest truth in on this world. It's beyond spirituality. Spirituality may have image, may have story, may have timelines, may have, some sort of, structure. So, if mankind doesn't worship an object, he's like, okay, that's not truth, just an object. And then realize the subject is not just the truth. To continue. Humanity is just, adding to the spectrum of what he can worship. And what worship is where human attention goes. If somebody says Mr.Within, if somebody says, Mr.Within, do you worship God? I would say I worship the inconceivable presence of God. And in some sense, the inconceivable presence of God is like the sun. And the conception and the language and the holy structures are in some sense the light beams. We use like construction beams to build skyscrapers. And the sun uses light beams to construct consciousness. To position the foundations of consciousness. It's all about the activation of potential. So, let's say you're someone and you find yourself in an archetype where you are, let's say, like a tyrant, a dictator. What else? Like, let's say Joker from the Batman. I don't know, like Conquerors, Genghis Khan, all of these guys, right? Like emperors and all of that. Let's say you're someone who you've found yourself in that state, or you're experiencing that state, or you're in that state, or you're around that state. The idea is that human consciousness has noticed that it functions well when it holds one foundational component to the moment absolute. Do you know what this means? That means you as a human being throughout the day, if you maintain something, if that means it's like something in your inner realms, if you maintain it absolutely from the beginning of the day till the end of the day, do you know, if you maintain that, your functioning as a human being goes to another level. Why? Because your inner realms has a shield, is shielding itself from unnecessary pressures. In Russian, I think they call it Rodina. I think, I don't know, they call it Rodina, something like that, I don't know. But what it is it's just this idea, this cultural idea, that every person on the planet, right, even if you've had a messed up like childhood or whatnot, but there's been moments in that childhood where there is something like a happy place. Okay, but it's not a happy place, it was a place where you were yourself, where you could be yourself. Okay. For example, when I was young, when I have a twin brother, and I remember, my parents would take me to my grandmother's house, and all my other cousins were there, and we were little kids. We'd all go into this room, turn off the light, and have pillow fights in the dark, and so it would be something like, it was as if it was this place where the person, where as a child, it was a state where I felt so free that there was no additional idea necessary. It's like, we don't understand, when young children play, that is like even more holier of a state than any sort of like saint or something like that. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it's a state where doubt is not being pushed due to misaction or misconduct. You see, why do they say, in religious context, children who die go to heaven? Right? That's something that in religious, and it's because they don't have an ego yet. And because in order to sin, you need to be something to sin. So the ego is the suggestion of the moment you are becoming a self to yourself, or the way you're being a self to yourself. I found it bizarre that, after the letters of the alphabet, it's as if they stopped creating new letters, and it's as if they should not allow any student in the educational system, in an advanced civilization, in an advanced, where their advanced humanity is present in that educational system. Do you understand? They will not allow you to graduate unless you create a new concept and a new word, and you add something new. Do you understand? Rather than just the educational is like, all right, pay us so we check that you know the past, which no longer is relevant in the present. It's like, excuse me, did I pay just to learn things that in some sense, in all those fields, technologies came and revolutionized it? Do you understand? It's as if culture is deluding us. Do you understand? Culture, and it's not that culture is evil, it's just badly designed. Terence McKenna said culture is not your friend. And I was like, is Terence McKenna saying like, these evil people are like engineering culture to kill itself or destroy itself? And I was like, that's the dumbest thing. If evil people are trying to destroy human beings, it's as if like, that's so stupid. Because what else is there in the void? There's nothing else except us. Whoever you are being evil on planet Earth, oh God, it's as if you're born in the wrong century. The savageness of the outer realms has now moved in the inner realms. People were physically savage. Now people in their communication are savage, right? And eventually from their communication, they're going to go, and all savageness is going to exist again in cyberspace. Cyberspace is going to be both an evil person's paradise and a good person's artificial paradise. Because evil is artificial in nature. And this is something I've never said, right? Something I just observed out of theology. But if somebody says, which out of all the angels in the theological Abrahamic monotheistic story, which out of all the angels is smarter than the rest. And you see, there is strangely an intelligence in the idea of rebellion, but also a breaking. Do you see in the theological story, it was as if God created, like, imagine, I forgot to say the second metaphor, oh my God. The second metaphor is the one of an inventor. Imagine there's an inventor, like the scientist, you know, and then the scientist has an apprentice, and the apprentice's name is Lucy, okay? And so, this scientist, you know, let's say this scientist, imagine this scientist invents an android, puts the android in one of those mirror wall rooms, and so the android doesn't know, like, it's being seen, right? So and imagine the scientist who created that, inventor who invented the android. The inventor tells this apprentice, go in the room and try to distract the android from the from the way I programmed it. You know, and so the apprentice goes, and the android suddenly becomes conscious in the room, and the apprentice is gone there with like some permission or something embedded in the code of the android. And so in some sense, what it is it's kind of like the android. If the android starts fighting with the apprentice who has gone in there to distract it from its program, the android will be ignorant of its program. You see, this is why all the yogis wanted to leave, and all the religious people were trying to get rid of their, let's say, sinful desires. Because it was an interaction with an inauthentic force as a natural being. Not natural, but let's say, I think we should call it demi-natural being, you know. Demi-natural. So that, imagine now the android, you know, suddenly aligns to its program, and the android becomes conscious in the room and wants to know in some, okay, the apprentice is in the room. Now this inventor sends in his son. Okay, imagine the inventor has a son, right? And the inventor sends his son, and he tells his son, go in the room where the android and the apprentice, which is trying to distract the android, are, and go give the android like a book, or go type in this code in the android. And so the son of the inventor goes into the room and types this code in some sense, and the android for the first time sees the son of the inventor and realizes that there is something more than in some sense what it knew previously. So this android abides by its program to realize that it was built beyond its program. We are all human beings, because if we were gods, we would not be here. We are all human beings, and to err is to be human. So we have to stop idolizing both ourselves, others, and the world to some degree. And when I say idolizing the world, when I say advanced, like in the context of an advanced civilization, is beyond even this talk, you know. But I'll say this. No, beyond like what I was saying. Anyways, what I'm trying to tell you is that the android, once it can accept what it is, once it can love the way it has been programmed, the way it has been invented, rather than rejecting self, others, and world. Imagine you found a natural moment, a moment so blissful, so blessed, that you could accept yourself in the void. You could accept others in the void. You could accept the greatness of your species in the void. And above all, you could accept the world and then the void itself And then the authority, which the light in our eyes is an echo of that command. You see, some people, like, some people believe the world was physically came about. Terence McKenna, for example, believed the world was made of language. For me, the world was commanded into existence. God is not a word. It's not a concept. No dictionary can write a definition of God. And no dictionary can write a definition of emptiness either. And a dictionary can attempt to write the definition of the infinite, but that definition would be infinite. So in the future, we're going to create a dictionary where the definitions of certain words have never stopped. AI has not stopped creating it yet. It's going to be the infinite dictionary of mankind. Imagine the future, there's going to be imagine Oxford Infinite Dictionary. Maybe Oxford could come and hire me and I'll help you guys with it. Let me tell you this. Because there has been moments where I have deceived my own self, I know that to worship a human being is to worship the deception that their karma has implanted in it. This doesn't mean that the person is wrong. We shouldn't like someone because they did something wrong. We have to just look at human beings. And I think this is really the beauty of how, this is at least what something Civilization 1.0 has gotten right, where it's pretty much saying, hey, everybody, we're a bunch of creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. We've become conscious. We've created these laws so we can all live together. And if you don't respect these laws, then it's like, what's the point of creating them? What's the point of us acting civilized? What's the point of wearing clothing if the person wants to act vicious and violent? Do you understand? That means if you're at the moment anybody acts violent, let's say you're a thug or something, get rid of all your clothing and like a naked animal go and fight people, because that's what violence is. Do you see? But mankind was so ingenious as an evolutionary animal that now he can take that intensity. Let's say you're a thug and you want to beat someone up, and instead you take that intensity to go solve a global problem. To go solve, and in some sense, accompany your advanced civilization. Your advancing civilization. Why else are we all in the same room? It's a multiplayer online game. In front of our eyes, we're all in the same in the same physical public server. Behind our eyes, everybody's in their own non-physical private server. But what is experiencing the totality is not a conceptual entity. So, whoever you are, if you do not acknowledge the greatness above you, you cannot show it to the potential of the greatness below you. And so, it's such a cool time, because the species is too smart, too intelligent, too civilized to, in some sense, entertain unnecessary destruction. Life is something where we're all like these random players trying to figure out what the mission is. The reason there's corruption, the reason it is easy for people to be evil, because their minds do not have a spectrum, do not have a contrast of how great humanity can be. Do you know, Sanskrit was a language where they would say it's the language of the light beings, the language of the glowing ones. And the glowing ones were not human, they were the presence of humanity. There's a difference. We in the future generations are going to look at 2023 and be like, oh my God, look at how all of our ancestors missed out on their collective identity. Except this one guy who was talking about it. The mind is so advanced that when it comes to worshiping a subject, it gets fascinating. You can worship a memory. And instead of worship, I should say a different thing. You can pilot your attention to an abstract event, to the real event where it's starting from. And either way, you're a being. You know, any human being that is not comfortable being, like this is enlightenment is another way of saying a conditional doer suddenly realized it's unconditionally being. Somebody was like, why do so many people in the Zen tradition laugh when they get enlightened? You know, somebody asked this. And the answer is because they see what their mind had made significant was not the only significance. This is the beautiful thing about life, you know. It's like in certain states where like, yo, life, what do you want me to do? To be a passenger, just watch the moment. And then certain moments you're like, life, what do you want me to do? To be a driver, to drive the moment, to move the moment, to animate the reality, to move things forward, you know. And then I realized, man, imagine 8 billion advanced beings in an advanced civilization on a sunny day. Just imagine stepping out and it's an advanced civilization. What that means is even if you make a mistake, civilization is advancing at such a pace that the mistakes don't matter. Do you know? It recorrects itself, as if in an advanced civilization there's infinite backup systems, so the future generations will never fail. And they'll understand the sacrifice we went to. Do you know, just like our ancestors got our body here, we as the minds of 2023 are going to get the minds of the future here. And then they are going to get the soul, the beyond that even. And it's this constant thing of we're passing down this torch, right? But at the same time, do you know, we're like climbing a mountain, you know. Life sometimes takes you to intense moments, you know. In 2016, I don't know what happened. Like I went it was like I was so skinny. I became like so skinny that when I would sit on a chair to give a talk, like it would hurt my ass, you know. Like I could feel my bone hitting the chair, right? And I was so concerned because I was in I was in such a trance state, right, that I had stopped caring for eating. You know, and then I had to, in some sense, like try to eat food and try to remember, like try to push it into my create a long-term, you know, new memory of the taste, you know. But what I'm saying is I went through a phase where I was like living as such a mental entity, as a mental being. I was living as such a verb that I was becoming ignorant to how I was being a noun, you know. Alright guys, I gotta head out soon, so let me wrap this up. God is the top G, okay? Top G, I'll just say it, cultural reference of traditional archetype. To a traditional there we go. So this thing about what guys, I don't know like how accurate my observation of this is, but pretty much this idea of like, you know, human beings wanting to express their sense of self by, in some sense, finding a focus point. You see, it's like some human beings have to be the common denominator for others, but at the same time, you know, it's like we're all human. That's the most beautiful thing. I went to a point in my spiritual experiences of reality where I'm like, yo, this is dehumanized. This is not human. For example, oneness is not human. Anybody who says I'm oneness, you're not human. That's dehumanized. Anybody who says I'm emptiness, that's dehumanized. Anybody who says I'm infinite, that's technically unnaturally humanized, but technically also dehumanized, because a human being is a mortal, defined as a mortal biological entity. It is only in a dualistic setting that we are human beings. Okay, so right now we're in duality's room, so it makes sense when in Rome be Roman, when in a dualistic realm, just be chill and understand the duality. But also comprehend, like I'm pretty much, Mr. Within's philosophical vision is that all ideas in reality can fit into the 4 categories of, I call it 0, 1, 2, infinity. So that means these are the 4 quadrants of reality. Everything falls into it. We come to see what the ego is: sense of self, awareness to current sense of self. There we go. This is a good definition. That's what ego. So Alan Watts also say it's pretty much the idea of yourself you have. So if you think you're a bad person, you have the ego of a bad person. If you think you're a good person, you have the ego of a good person. It's pretty much just the inner, it's the subject, it's the idea of you. Okay? Culture is very interesting. Culture is how behavior, how silent behavior through language became a story of life. So how silent behavior through language patternized a story of life. So what does this mean? So culture is this, guys. It's pretty much behavior. So imagine a bunch of people from like different cultures, or imagine a bunch of people stranded on an island, and on that island, imagine in the evening they all start a fire. Like that becomes part of the culture. It's the behaviors that are repeated to such a degree that people forget why they're doing it, and it's embedded in the system. Do you know? That's culture. And the coolest way to see culture, I mean, really, Terence McKenna opened my eyes to this, that you have to try to, it's kind of like when you're young, but at some point in your life, you just pause the video game and start thinking about the video game and relying on your own power, your own being, your own life force. That means if somebody comes and says, Mr. Within, how do I pilot my life force? And somebody comes and says, Mr. Within, how do I move my soul? I'd be like, the first person is way more aware than the other one. Do you know? Because in some sense, when it's dynamic, it's very hard to conceptualize. There's states of being that it's like when somebody is, it's like, what was it? I think this was, if I remember correctly, Zeno's paradox of the arrow. Right, where somebody shot an arrow in the air, and the arrow was like, it's like, in order, that arrow was in like could be seen in a frame of time as not moving, just hovering in the air. But how could that be when the arrow is actually moving? So the duality of something that is observed to be static and dynamic at the same time. From one angle it's dynamic, from another angle it's static. Karma is very interesting, because karma is the idea that whatever is happening to you is because of you. Do you know? That means the person's like, how do I know I have faith in God? It's because of me. Because if I did not choose to see that way, that reality would not have been seen. Do you see, the faith is sometimes opening a door and realizing it was always an open doorway, So karma is the notion that you are causing your effect. you are causing your effect. So karma is like, what's the point of consciousness? To become responsible with how it is, to become aware of how it's moving here. So, oh my god, so karma is like another way of saying consciousness is noticing in the present. Consciousness is noticing how it got to the present. So, for example, my karma is like, I don't know, being some guy who talks a lot in the lifetime. But at the same time, because I reached a point where I was like, I didn't create this world, right? So at some point, my own individual causal position became synonymous with, in some sense, the collective causal position. So what I mean is that rather than seeing myself as part of the system, the moment I realize the whole system is happening at once, how can I just be a part of it? So karma is, in some sense, just like an engineer looks at a machine and wants to understand how that mechanism works. Like, that's really what engineering is, the function of that structure. Once you understand the mechanism, you understand the karma, and if the effect view of the karma gets replaced with the causal view of the karma. For example, karmically, I was super shy when I was young, and so I created a atmosphere within myself where I felt like there was something I had to say to the world, something there was to share with the world. But at the same time, you know, the vision is so remarkable, because a person, they say like the food you eat is like becomes you, right? So similarly, I think what enters our attention also to some degree is being like, just like how you put something in your mouth and like the food goes into your stomach and it's being digested, right? The moment we look at something, the brain is digesting information, or another way of saying it is the brain is consuming or recording or receiving the information, right? And in some sense abstractly recreating itself. That means we're like such advanced intelligence that we take like a physical, we take shapes and we animate them, we give them life. The mind is here to give life to the body, but the mind's life is beyond the mind's definition, its own definition, in contrast to the body. So realization, there's also this idea of self-realization. Self-realization is how yourself realizes what was here before it. Some people say you honor your ancestors, but imagine you wanted to honor, instead of your ancestors, you wanted to honor a world, not just a person. You wanted to honor your ancestral world, you know? Not your ancestral relative, but your ancestral world, right? And so to honor a world, you have to see the world that is here now and understand that the world is, like, this might sound strange, but the world, like, it's sometimes human beings have to just put their palm on the surface of the planet and just be like, it's okay, planet, don't freak out. To acknowledge the living earth, and to realize that the life of this world seems to be broadcasted from beyond it. Just like I'm recording a live stream, right? This is being live streamed right now. My consciousness is being live streamed. We're all like this. Ideas come and go behind our eyes way faster. It's another way of saying the world behind your eyes changes way quicker than the world in front of your eyes. So you think you're a thought that's thinking, but the idea of a thought that thinks is impossible, because how can a thought think? How can something hollow fulfill itself? So there is a type of karma that perhaps arises when religion gives you the idea when politics gives you the idea that you need to be, in some sense, a taker, a dominator, right? And then religion is giving you the idea that you need to be submissive, right? And so really, this is the important thing, that when it comes to ideas of religion and spirituality and just the presence of truth and the mysteries beyond, right, and metaphysics, there requires a certain elegance, a sort of craftsmanship, or a sort of, I don't want to say discipline, but it's a sort of elegance and style in looking at these ideas, because they're very multifaceted. So what I'm saying is, if you're someone who suddenly identifies with monotheistic religion, but suddenly are actually trying to are subconsciously acting like God, or are subconsciously being like, letting people worship you like God. Do you know what I'm saying? It's as if there needs to be an incredible recalibration in the moment. Why? Because you will burden yourself. Because we are human. When a human being acts like a god, it suffers. Why? Because it's built to be a human. Do you understand? We are designed to be human. It's the incredible phase. The future generations are just waiting to see how advanced our humanity will be. And can you imagine a future where there is such incredible awareness and kindness that human beings are like, it's okay, not because, we have fictional hope, because we are here now. We are the engineers of the future. We are the designers of the future. And some people say, there is an idea of leadership, right? Lao Tzu is so wise and ahead of his time. Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching says, once the leader's task is done, the people will say we did it ourselves, something like that. I don't know if it's in the Tao Te Ching, but it's a quote attributed to Lao Tzu. Once the leader's task is done, the people will say we did it ourselves. Do you understand? That means there's no such thing as a leader in a world where nature, in accordance to its own will, is leading us. Do you understand? The leader of the individual entity is the totality of its experience of world. In 2020, I declared we have moved into the era of advanced communication. That means human beings are realizing they're not objects and subjects, and they're starting to have a sort of transcendental fun, I think. And it's so much better to be honestly rude than artificially kind, I am telling you. Why? Because that's in some sense going against God. You see, God is like, let me say the monotheistic view is as if something perfect created something that did something imperfect, but the creation was perfect. God created something that it had all the angels bow down to. Do you see? Had all of its creation bow down to it. And God is so certain that even though an angel didn't bow down, God is certain that that angel will bow down. Do you understand? Because God's authority, it's as if the sun's authority is beyond the beams of the sun, beyond the sunbeams. And self-realization, some people say it's kind of like there's a truth here and you're new to the situation. You've been born new into this world. And so self-realization is how yourself is based on your new, let's say, conditioning of this world. But then you realize the way we are being a being in the world is strangely, timelessly, like an eternal antiquity. That means it's like eternity doesn't have time, but to creatures in time, it's like, yo, what was there before time and what was there long ago? It's like if it's still around here now, it's kind of like an eternalism. So what I'm saying is, sometimes life may put us in situations where we may take ourselves so seriously that we feel that reality revolves around us. And that's what Galileo understood when he's like, yo, I discovered 4 moons of Jupiter, somebody looking through my telescope. And the Inquisition at the time was like, nah, man, Earth is the center of the world. Don't talk smack, you know? And so that's really the thing about selfishness, ego, greed. It is in some sense you're acting like a king in your own world, but once you realize there's a...
Been in an institution, cells. Do they keep you in a cell? Cells. When you're not performing your duties, do they keep you in a little box? Cells.
Yo guys, this is a trippy song that just my hand accidentally hit. It's the same song, I think, as the one before. It says Blade Runner 2049. Anyways. At least the music is ahead of its time, you know. We are living for the advancement of our species because that's cool. That's the coolest thing to do on Earth, is to build an advanced civilization. And even cooler than that would be to build an advanced civilization where some people, I will tell you why the advanced civilization is the greatest idea on the planet. Because if you're religious, the advanced civilization is the greatest expression of the will of God. If you're secular, the advanced civilization is the greatest expression of the will of man. If you're a philosopher, you know, the advanced civilization is the greatest outer realm event. The greatest top of the spectrum of the headquarters of consciousness. And they're like, do you think you're on Earth right now? And we're like, yo, what should we say to these aliens? You know? And somebody's like, and imagine I'm there too, and I'm like, I'll probably be like, no, we are not earthlings. We are universal beings. We are, our definition of ourself is as far as the edge of our consciousness can discover. A species is here. The songs of the advanced civilization have already begun. In the future, you're going to see everybody talking about the advancing civilization.
Cells. Do they keep you in a cell? Cells. When you're not performing your duties, do they keep you in a little box? Cells. Interlinked. What's it like to hold the hand of someone you love?
Guys, I gotta see Blade Runner 2049. Like I gotta see this thing again. What is this? I think this is from the game. Yeah, this is from the Blade Runner. Oh no, that's 2077, whatever it is. Okay, anyways. So back to this, dear human beings, don't idolize objects, don't idolize subjects, don't idolize the combination of both. Realize that to keep things simple means to appreciate how we can all be healthy beings on a planet and communicate in healthy ways, and realize that the future is where we can actually change the world. The present, it's already like this, right? The past is past, of course, but the present is like, okay, this is what we have now. And so the future is how we add to this. Some people are like, yo, why am I conscious? Why am I seeing a world? You know? And the great answer came, to do something, you know, to do something about what you see. Because if we can love being here, perhaps we can also love beyond being here, you know. Rise, mankind, rise. Civilization 2.0 awaits.